Most people think success begins when you get the opportunity. They think confidence comes after you achieve something great. But what if that's completely backwards? What if success has nothing to do with talent, nothing to do with luck, and everything to do with the way you have trained your mind to think when nobody is watching? Because the truth is this: the strongest people in the world are not the most gifted. They are simply the people who learned how to control their thoughts when life became difficult. If you can train your mind, you can change your life. And once that happens, people will no longer recognize the person you used to be. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are engaged in a conversation with yourself. It is the one conversation that never stops. From the moment you wake up in the morning to the final thoughts you have before falling asleep at night, there is a voice constantly shaping the way you see the world, the way you see your future, and most importantly, the way you see yourself. Most people underestimate how powerful this internal dialogue truly is. They think success is determined by circumstances, by luck, by talent, or by opportunity. But the truth is far deeper than that. Long before success becomes visible in your external world, it is quietly being built, or destroyed inside your mind, through the thoughts you repeat every single day. The human mind is incredibly obedient. It listens carefully to repetition. Whatever you consistently tell yourself, your brain eventually begins to accept as truth. It does not stop to ask whether what you are saying is accurate. It does not challenge whether those beliefs are helping you grow or holding you back. It simply absorbs what it hears repeatedly and starts building your behavior around those beliefs. Thoughts. This means that the words you say to yourself are not harmless. They are instructions. And over time, those instructions become identity. Think about how often people say things like, "I'm just not confident enough. I'm always unlucky. I'm not smart enough to do something big," or "success is for other people, not for someone like me." At first, these may feel like temporary thoughts, but after repeating them hundreds or even thousands of times, they stop feeling like thoughts and begin feeling like facts. The mind hears repetition and begins organizing your actions around those beliefs. Suddenly, you stop taking risks. You avoid opportunities. You hesitate before speaking. You doubt yourself before you even begin. And without realizing it, you have trained your own mind to keep you small. Now understand something important. The same process works in the opposite direction. If negative repetition can weaken your identity, positive repetition can rebuild it. The moment you begin consciously choosing better thoughts, you begin changing the way your brain responds to challenges. This does not mean pretending life is easy or blindly repeating empty motivational phrases. It means intentionally shifting the story you tell yourself every day. Instead of saying, "I can't handle this," you begin saying, "I am learning how to handle difficult things." Instead of saying, "I always fail," you begin saying, "Every failure is teaching me something valuable." Instead of seeing obstacles as proof that you should quit, you begin viewing them as part of the process of growth. Slowly, your mind starts adapting to this new information. It begins seeing possibility where it once saw limitation. Most people wait for confidence to appear before changing their behavior. But confidence is often the result of changing the internal story first. You cannot consistently perform like a strong person while constantly telling yourself that you are weak. The mind always works to prove itself right. If you believe you are incapable, your actions will support that belief. If you believe you are capable of growth, your actions begin aligning with that belief instead. Your future is not being created only by the big decisions you make once in a while. It is being shaped quietly by the repeated thoughts that live inside your head every single day. The words you repeat in silence eventually become the life you live out loud. If you want success, if you want confidence, if you want transformation, then start paying attention to the language you use with yourself. Because your mind is always listening. And eventually, it becomes exactly what you have trained it to believe. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have about confidence is believing that it comes from success, recognition, or the approval of other people. Many spend years chasing validation, thinking that once they achieve something impressive, confidence will suddenly appear. They believe confidence is something you earn after winning, after being praised, or after proving yourself to the world. But real confidence does not begin when the world starts believing in you. Real confidence begins when you start proving to yourself that your own word means something. At its core, confidence is nothing more than trust. And the strongest form of trust is self-trust. Think about how trust works in any relationship. If someone makes promises over and over again, but constantly breaks them, eventually you stop believing them. It does not matter how good their intentions are. Repeated inconsistency destroys trust. Now apply that same principle to the relationship you have with yourself. Every single day, you make promises in your own mind. You say you will wake up early tomorrow. You say you will exercise. You promise yourself that this week you will finally focus on your goals. You tell yourself that you are going to stop procrastinating, stop wasting time, and begin becoming the person you know you are capable of becoming. But then something happens. The alarm rings and you hit snooze. The work becomes difficult and you delay it. The discomfort arrives and suddenly excuses begin taking over. What most people fail to understand is that your mind notices every single broken promise. Every time you commit to something and then ignore it, your subconscious records that pattern. You begin teaching yourself that your own words cannot be trusted. Over time, this weakens your relationship with yourself. You stop believing in your own ability to follow through. Then when bigger opportunities appear in life, hesitation takes control, because deep down, you have built a habit of inconsistency. You have unknowingly trained yourself to doubt your own commitment. This is why confidence is not created by motivation. Motivation is temporary. It comes and goes depending on emotions, environment, and circumstances. Some days you feel excited. Some days you feel completely drained. If your progress depends only on motivation, you will become inconsistent because emotions are unpredictable. Discipline is what creates lasting confidence because discipline teaches you how to act, independently of how you feel. It is the ability to follow through even when excitement disappears. Imagine the power of repeatedly proving to yourself that you do what you say you will do. You decide to wake up early and you do it. You set a goal to complete difficult work and you finish it. You commit to exercising regularly and you stay consistent. At first these actions may seem small, almost insignificant. But every completed promise sends a message directly to your mind. That message says, I can trust myself. I follow through. I am becoming stronger. Over time, this repeated evidence changes your identity. The strongest people are rarely the most naturally talented. Often, they are simply the people who have built deep confidence by honoring commitments they made privately. Nobody sees these moments. Nobody applauds when you resist distractions or stay disciplined when you are tired. But these are the moments that build real internal strength. Every time you choose action over excuses, you are reinforcing belief in yourself. Confidence is not something you find one day. It is something you build slowly through repeated evidence. It is created in ordinary moments when nobody is watching and no reward is guaranteed. The more promises you keep to yourself, the more powerful your identity becomes. And once you trust yourself completely, you stop fearing challenges because you know something most people never learn. You know that no matter what happens, you can depend on yourself to keep moving forward. That is where true confidence begins. Most people believe mental strength is something you are simply born with. They look at confident, disciplined, highly successful people and assume those individuals naturally possess qualities that make them stronger than everyone else. They assume courage is a personality trait, resilience is something inherited, and the ability to stay calm under pressure belongs only to a rare group of exceptional people. But the truth is much simpler and far more uncomfortable. Mental strength is not something people are born with. It is something they train, often without even realizing they are training it. And the biggest difference between those who grow stronger and those who remain stuck, often, comes down to one habit: how they respond to discomfort. Every day, life gives you opportunities to train your mind. The problem is that most people have unknowingly trained themselves in the wrong direction. The moment something feels difficult, they immediately search for escape. When a challenge appears, they avoid it. When fear enters their mind, they retreat. When they feel stress, pressure, uncertainty, or emotional discomfort, their first instinct is to run toward comfort. They distract themselves with entertainment, postpone difficult decisions, abandon long-term goals, and convince themselves that avoiding pain will somehow protect them. But what they fail to understand is that every time they escape discomfort, they are teaching their mind a dangerous lesson. The human brain learns through repetition. Every repeated behavior becomes a pattern. If every difficult situation causes you to quit, your mind begins associating discomfort with danger. It starts believing that challenge itself is something to avoid. Over time, even small obstacles begin feeling overwhelming because your brain has been conditioned to retreat the moment pressure appears. You become increasingly dependent on comfort, and comfort slowly becomes a prison. What once felt like harmless avoidance gradually turns into weakness, hesitation, and fear of growth. Now think about the opposite. Imagine deliberately staying present when things become difficult. Imagine choosing not to escape the moment discomfort arrives. You wake up early when your body wants more sleep. You continue working even when boredom appears. You keep going through frustration instead of stopping the moment progress feels slow. You face uncomfortable conversations instead of avoiding conflict. In each of these moments, something powerful happens inside the brain. You begin teaching yourself that discomfort is not danger. You begin proving to your own mind that difficult experiences are survivable. This is exactly how mental toughness is created. Not through giant life-changing moments, but through repeated exposure to small discomforts that gradually strengthen your tolerance for pressure. Athletes understand this principle. Muscles only grow when exposed to resistance. The body becomes stronger because stress forces adaptation. The human mind works exactly the same way. Emotional and mental strength develop when you repeatedly face situations that challenge your comfort zone. Without resistance, there is no growth. One reason so many people remain stuck in life is because they have built entire lifestyles designed around avoiding discomfort. They avoid failure by never taking risks. They avoid rejection by never expressing themselves honestly. They avoid hard work by settling for easy routines. They avoid uncertainty by refusing to pursue ambitious goals. And slowly, without realizing it, they train themselves to live smaller lives. Success requires the exact opposite mindset. Growth begins the moment you stop asking how to make life easier and start asking how to become stronger. The discomfort you avoid today becomes the weakness that controls you tomorrow. But the discomfort you face today becomes the strength that protects you in the future. Every difficult moment is training. Every challenge is an opportunity. Every uncomfortable decision is a chance to build resilience. The strongest minds in the world are not the people who never experience fear, pressure, or struggle. They are the people who stopped running from discomfort and learned to stay steady inside. Difficult moments, because when you repeatedly train yourself to face what is hard instead of escaping it, your mind slowly transforms, and eventually what once felt impossible becomes normal. That is the moment real strength begins. Most people spend their lives trying to change their habits without ever realizing that their habits are often being shaped long before they make a conscious decision. They focus entirely on motivation, discipline, and willpower, believing that success is simply about trying harder. But one truth that many ignore is that human behavior is deeply influenced by environment. Whether you recognize it or not, the world around you is constantly programming the way you think, the way you behave, and the standards you accept for yourself. The people you spend time with, the conversations you listen to, the content you consume every day, and the routines you expose yourself to all quietly influence who you are becoming. Think about how powerful repetition is. If every single day you surround yourself with negativity, complaints, excuses, and people who constantly focus on limitations, your mind begins adapting to that atmosphere. It becomes normal to think small. It becomes normal to doubt opportunities. It becomes normal to complain rather than solve problems. Over time, your brain stops questioning these patterns because what surrounds you repeatedly eventually starts feeling familiar. And familiarity often becomes identity. This is why so many people struggle to grow even when they genuinely want change. They set goals, create plans, and feel inspired for a short period of time. But then they return to the same environment that originally shaped the habits they are trying to escape. They spend time around people who reinforce old behaviors. They continue consuming content filled with distraction and negativity. They remain in routines that constantly pull their attention away from growth. Then they wonder why motivation disappears so quickly. The truth is simple. You cannot consistently think differently while remaining completely surrounded by the same influences that built your old mindset. Human beings are incredibly adaptive creatures. We naturally absorb the energy around us. Spend enough time around people who constantly complain, and complaining starts feeling normal. Spend enough time around people who accept mediocrity, and average standards begin feeling acceptable. Spend enough time in environments built around distraction, and focus becomes difficult. This happens quietly. There is rarely a dramatic moment where everything changes overnight. Instead, small influences accumulate day after day until they begin shaping your identity. Now imagine reversing that process. Imagine intentionally building an environment that supports growth rather than weakness. Imagine surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to think bigger. People who do not tolerate excuses. People who remind you of your potential when you begin doubting yourself. Suddenly your standards begin shifting. You start seeing discipline as normal. You begin noticing opportunities where you previously saw obstacles. Growth stops feeling impossible because the environment around you reinforces stronger thinking. But environment is not only about people. It is also about what you allow into your mind every single day. The videos you watch, the music you constantly listen to, the social media you scroll through for hours, the books you choose to read, the conversations you repeatedly engage in. Everything entering your mind is shaping your internal world. If your daily routine is filled with negativity, meaningless distractions, and information that keeps your attention scattered, your thinking will reflect that chaos. Successful people understand something powerful. Protecting your mind is part of building success. They do not allow random influences to control their focus. They become intentional about what they consume because they understand that thoughts are not created in isolation. Thoughts are heavily influenced by repeated exposure. If you want confidence, discipline, and success, do not only ask how to change yourself. Ask what is surrounding you every day. Ask whether your environment is building the person you want to become or quietly reinforcing the person you are trying to leave behind. Because the truth is simple. You become what you repeatedly expose yourself to. And often, your future is being shaped not by the decisions you make occasionally, but by the environment you choose to live inside every single day. One of the greatest reasons people remain stuck in life is because they have convinced themselves that action should only begin when confidence arrives first. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait until fear disappears. They wait until they feel fully prepared, fully motivated, and completely certain that everything will work out exactly as planned. In their minds, confidence is supposed to come before action. They believe successful people move forward because they naturally feel ready, while everyone else remains frozen because they lack certainty. But this way of thinking has trapped millions of people in a cycle of hesitation that quietly steals years of potential. The truth is that confidence rarely comes before action. In fact, confidence is usually created because of action. Most people have the entire process backwards. They think they must feel strong before taking difficult steps, when in reality, strength is built by repeatedly taking difficult steps before feeling ready. The people who appear fearless are often not fearless at all. They simply train themselves to move despite uncertainty. They learn something powerful that many never understand. Fear is not a signal to stop. Fear is often a signal that growth is waiting on the other side. Think about every major challenge people face in life. Starting a business, speaking in front of others, applying for a job that feels beyond current ability, approaching new opportunities, beginning a difficult project, changing unhealthy habits, building a completely different future. In nearly every one of these situations, fear appears immediately. Doubt begins speaking louder. Questions start forming. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I embarrass myself? What if I am not good enough? These thoughts feel so uncomfortable that most people interpret them as warnings. They assume fear means they should wait longer until confidence somehow appears naturally. But confidence does not magically appear through waiting. Waiting usually strengthens fear because the longer you avoid action, the larger uncertainty becomes inside your mind. When you postpone difficult decisions repeatedly, your brain begins seeing those situations as increasingly dangerous. Over time, even small challenges begin feeling overwhelming because avoidance has taught your mind that fear controls your decisions. Now imagine choosing the opposite response. Imagine acting while fear is still present. You begin the project even though uncertainty exists. You speak even though nervousness remains. You take the opportunity even though self-doubt continues whispering in the background. In that moment, something important happens psychologically. Your brain begins collecting evidence that fear does not equal failure. It starts learning that uncomfortable emotions can exist while progress still happens. Every single action taken despite fear weakens fear's control over your life. Each experience teaches the mind that survival does not depend on avoidance. The challenge you once imagined as overwhelming slowly begins losing its power. What once felt terrifying starts becoming manageable simply because repeated action creates familiarity. This is how courage is built. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is repeated movement while fear exists. And through repeated courage, confidence naturally begins growing. You begin trusting yourself because you have evidence. You have proof that even when uncertainty appears, you are capable of moving forward anyway. The most successful people in the world did not wait until they felt perfectly prepared. If they had done that, many would have never started at all. They understood that action creates confidence far more effectively than thinking ever will. The mind learns through experience, not endless preparation. Your future changes the moment you stop asking whether you feel ready and start acting, regardless of emotion. Because readiness is often an illusion. Growth begins when action becomes stronger than hesitation. The people who win in life are not always the most talented or naturally confident. Very often, they are simply the ones who train themselves to take action first and allow confidence to catch up later. And that simple decision changes everything. Most people spend their entire lives focusing on what they need to do in order to become successful. They search endlessly for the perfect strategy, the right habits, the most effective routines, and the fastest path toward achieving their goals. They ask questions like, what business should I start? What skills should I learn? What morning routine should I follow? How many hours should I work? What habits will make me more productive? They become obsessed with action because they believe success is simply the result of doing the renewed right things consistently. But what most people fail to understand is that actions alone do not create lasting transformation. Real change begins much deeper than behavior. It begins with identity. The reason so many people struggle to maintain progress is because they try to change actions without changing the person behind those actions. They force themselves to follow new habits temporarily, but internally they still see themselves the same way they always have. Someone may try waking up early, but deep down they still believe they are lazy. Someone may attempt building discipline, but internally they still identify as someone who always quits. Someone may begin pursuing bigger goals, but secretly they continue believing they are ordinary, incapable, or destined for average results. Because of this internal conflict, change rarely lasts. The human mind has a powerful need for consistency. It constantly works to keep your actions aligned with the identity you believe about yourself. If you see yourself as someone who lacks discipline, eventually your behavior will return to habits that match that belief. If you believe deep down that success belongs to other people, you will unconsciously sabotage opportunities that could prove otherwise. The mind always works to protect identity, even when that identity is limiting your growth. This is why temporary motivation fails so often. Motivation can push you to act differently for a short period of time, but eventually, your subconscious pulls you back toward familiar patterns because your identity has not changed. You cannot permanently perform like a successful person while continuing to think like the person you used to be. Lasting transformation happens only when your internal self-image begins shifting. Instead of constantly asking yourself what you need to do in order to become successful, ask a far more powerful question. Ask yourself who you need to become. Because success is rarely about isolated actions. It is about becoming the kind of person for whom those actions feel natural. A disciplined person does not struggle constantly with discipline because discipline has become part of identity. A confident person does not force confidence in every situation because confidence has become part of how they see themselves. A focused person does not rely on motivation every day because focus has become integrated into their character. This means true growth requires changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Stop saying you are someone who always procrastinates. Stop repeating that you lack confidence. Stop defining yourself by past failures, old habits, and previous versions of your life. Every time you continue identifying with weakness, you give that weakness permission to stay. Begin building a new identity intentionally. Start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. Start believing you are becoming disciplined. Start thinking like someone capable of handling pressure, overcoming setbacks,
and staying committed long enough to win.
At first it may feel unfamiliar because your old identity has existed for years. But repeated action combined with repeated belief slowly begins rewriting that internal bit, self-image. The most powerful transformation in life happens when you stop chasing external success and begin becoming a different person internally. Because success is never just about achieving goals. Goals eventually end. Real success is becoming someone capable of consistently creating the life you want. The moment your identity changes, your habits begin changing naturally. Your standards rise automatically. Your choices improve without constant struggle. And eventually, the external world begins reflecting the internal transformation that happened first. In the end, your future is not determined simply by what you do. It is determined by who you believe you are becoming. Change your identity, and you change your entire life. The world is full of people waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel confident. Waiting for life to become easier. But success was never about waiting. It was always about training your mind to stay focused when others lose control. The battle has never been outside of you. It has always been inside your own mind. Master your thoughts. Control your habits. Build discipline every single day. And one day, people will look at you and wonder how you became someone they no longer recognize.